And now coming to you live from a undisclosed location somewhere deep in the heart of American flyover country, North American to be exact. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower, under the radar, but always, ladies and gentlemen, over the top. And most of you know that I was born and raised in the state of Florida. So, and in fact, I'll be there next week. I'll be there this week. Time flies when you're having fun. Truth Frequency News, your first time catching Jeff live. Well, it is quite contagious. So I have a feeling you'll be back. Jamie Dawson, hello to you. Cocoa Beach was quite the trip for Joyce Marie. We won't ask for details. It sounds like a little TMI. But yes, she sees a place called Inverness, like in Scotland, only not across the way. And I was from a place just out of sight there in Pinellas County. But interesting stuff. And this caught my attention because I'm from there and because it just doesn't make any sense. Earthquake, rumble, or something else, reports Florida today. Seismologist says that the Space Coast was rocked by some type of a rattle that remains unidentified. And it's craziness, ladies and gentlemen. This is from the newspaper Florida Today, part of the USA Today network. And this is from their website, just so you can see it there. A mysterious rumble, like an earthquake, occurred on the Space Coast of Florida. And you're like, well, what's the big deal? Why don't they just say it's an earthquake? Well, ladies and gentlemen, in Florida, we don't have earthquakes. We just don't have earthquakes because there's frankly not that much earth. In Florida, you got a pardon me, you got a little bit of topsoil. You got a bunch of sand, a few shells, and then the water table is extremely high. So we don't have earthquakes in Florida, but yet a mysterious rumble rattled patio doors, shook houses across the Space Coast. And the Space Coast, you can see here, this is Cape Canaveral, Titusville. Basically, the Space Coast is kind of like from they all have their names for their different coasts. The Gold Coast is down under the Space Coast, and then anyway, so you're probably thinking Cocoa Beach-ish up to Daytona Beach is sort of what we refer to in Florida as the Space Coast, but it shook houses, it rattled patio doors Friday night, and they say it wasn't an earthquake. Like I said, it's not an earthquake. We don't have earthquakes. It shook beaches. It shook houses from Cocoa Beach, which is right down here, all the way up to Merritt Island. Merritt Island's up in here somewhere. So it shook homes all the way from Cocoa Beach up to Merritt Island. Interesting, ladies and gentlemen. It was not an earthquake. So what is it that can shake, rattle, and roll the Space Coast if it's not an earthquake? We looked into this, and we did not see any evidence of a tectonic earthquake. It could have been something that didn't originate in the ground, said Paul Earle. And Paul Earle is not just some guy they found driving a potato truck. Paul Earle is a seismologist with the United States Geological Survey, the scientific agency that monitors earthquakes across the globe. Sorry, flat earthers. This guy said, look, I know it looked like an earthquake. It felt like an earthquake. It sounded like an earthquake, but it was not an earthquake. And listen to what he says. It could be something like a hypersonic jet. It could be munitions, or it could be a sonic boom. Unfortunately, we can't give a definitive answer on what it was. So how many hypersonic jets, munitions, sonic booms are taking place on the Space Coast that, well, we just can't give it a definitive answer if it was one of those? Do they happen all the time? And you know what? I understand that we're in the truth movement and we tend to be somewhat skeptical of public officials, but just because someone is a scientist and they say that they make a statement doesn't mean that they're automatically disqualified unless you believe in flat earth theory. Then anybody that is a scientist and uses math and uses objective data, they're just a bunch of shills. Shame on you. But anyway, I felt my sliding doors vibrating for a solid 2.5 minutes. Left my bedroom, went to the front door to look for a rocket because she thought one was lifting off. Thought I might have missed it. But no, it was not a rocket. There was no liftoffs from either of the space centers there on the Space Coast. If the strange rumblings had been detected, it would be the first of its kind, first seismic activity in the area since 2006. It's been since 2006 that people in Florida felt tremors stemming from a 6.0 magnitude earthquake centered several hundred miles away in the Gulf of Mexico, over by where your friendly neighborhood Christian Whistleblower is from. So this is very, very strange, ladies and gentlemen. This is, as Captain Kirk would say, this is damn peculiar. And it is. It really is. There are very rare occurrence earthquakes in the Sunshine State, which sits on a chorus of, like I just told you, it sits on a cushion of porous limestone and bedrock, which is what I basically said, without the scientific ease. Crazy, ladies and gentlemen. Crazy. And yet, a 2.6 magnitude earthquake that wasn't an earthquake was reported. No significant damage was reported. Very rare. It is the least seismically active state, says Earl from the USGS. Now, sometimes, that's funny, Daniel. Sometimes the Earth may move as a result of a man-made phenomenon. Rocket launch, there were none. Shockwaves from an overhead airplane, there were none. Heavy trucks or trains, there were none. Weather can play a role, but none of this has been found to be able to say that it is a source. Even the officials at Patrick Air Force Base say there were no military air exercises that could have been involved in causing the shaking, ladies and gentlemen. The 45th Space Wing says that they were not responsible. And then this cryptic comment, I cannot comment at this time as to its origin. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? It happened. It was big. It was loud. The residents of the Space Coast were all shook up, but nobody knows what happened, and nobody knows what caused it. That's interesting to me, and it just happens to be in a highly militarized part of the nation, and also one with the largest portion of our nation's space exploration stuff. Sorry, it's the best word I could come up with in a minute. Somebody says it could be Godzilla. Well, if it happened in Japan, I would believe Godzilla. Maybe we got a different Godzilla hanging out there in the Atlantic Ocean that we've not heard about. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Ooh, I like what Richard Elliston says. Underwater weapon testing to counter Russia's new subs that are pretty much invisible. I like that. That's interesting stuff. That is interesting stuff. Richards has friends in Cocoa that felt it, said it felt like when the shuttle used to go up. Yeah. Or was some type of a craft launched that was stealth and that was not reported. Because if it looks like a launch, feels like a launch, sounds like a launch, even though there's no sound. So what kind of technology could be employed, ladies and gentlemen, now on the Space Coast that goes up like a rocket, makes the same type of a seismic print of a rocket, but doesn't make any noise? Wow. Is it new technology being tested on the Space Coast? I don't know, but I find it very, very interesting. And whenever the government says, oh, we don't know anything about it, It makes you feel a little uneasy. Francis says maybe a cloaked vessel could be. Maybe, Nick Bravo says, we're testing warp drive. Speaking of Captain James Tiberius Kirk. And that's what I was saying, Truth Frequency News. So I cannot comment at this time as to its origin. That's what Patrick Air Force Base, the Space Command, said. I think it could mean something other than the face of the statement as well. Truth Frequency News. Interesting stuff. Ooh, Monkey Experiment says something coming into Earth's atmosphere and slamming on the brakes. That could be as well. Nobody injured. No damage. Very, very interesting stuff, ladies and gentlemen. So there you have it. Just a little, isn't this weird? Just a little something else to think about. Just a little something else for you to, let's see what Charlie D'Angelo says. Usually pretty credible info from Charlie D'Angelo. They found an underground opening about 30 feet wide, 40 feet high in California. And they think one might be near there as well for submarines to travel from Florida underground to Nevada at a testing. No way. Impossible. You can't put a tunnel under Florida, bro. It would never stand up. Florida's a sandbar, cousin. You can't put a tunnel in a sandbar. It just would it would collapse. No, you just can't do it. And trust me, the scariest moment of my life was we built what we thought was going to be a cool little fort dug out of the sand and dirt in Florida. Yeah, guess what happened? We got in the damn thing. It collapsed on us. I thought I was going to die. My dad somehow knew we were there, drugged me out by my leg. Or there might never have been a Christian whistleblower. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave you to decide what it could be. And we should remain diligent. And I think that this gives us another reason to ask questions, another reason to question answers, another reason to realize we are the last generation of real humans. And it's time to unindoctrinate ourselves.